welcome back to another installment of the golden age of leather. Biker stories from the end of the 70s, the 80s, and 90s till the present day. I'm still riding, causing trouble, and all of those things. Breathing, much to the chagrin of many. I have a fortune cookie here. Well, I ate the fortune cookie, but hey, Bowie. It says, loved one's kindness warms the heart. And we're here to, look at that's a heartwarming little guy. Say hi, Bowie. Isn't he heartwarming? You see him? He's a happy boy. You know what he wants? He wants a goodie. He's already had like 20 goodies. And he really doesn't need them. He's not bad, but he's just a goodie at it. I have some of the highest quality dog poop. It's expensive. Dog treats. Hi. You want to come in and say hello? See, look at how happy he is. You're a good boy. Thanks for the kisses. I'm not giving you no goodies. Wow. That was unplanned and unscripted. Anyway, knocked my hat off. I gotta make sure I'm beautiful. Anyway, welcome back to the channel here. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, share, go get your grandma, put her in front of the computer, TV to have a good watch at what could be. I don't know if we'll have one more segment after this, but it's winding down on the brutal murder of DeLawrence DeGroff by ex-members of the Freedom Riders, including myself. Now, I was an ex-Freedom Rider, but I am not responsible in any way for what happened to Diggy. And I'd also like to take this moment to ask the members of the Freedom Riders what you're afraid to put my videos on your channel. Not that I need all 44 members that are on your page there to have a look at your Facebook, but whatever. I think out of respect to me and other previous members that made the club, and also to let you know, back in the days of the support club days and the Los Lobos, you're lucky you still have a club. If it wasn't for me and my brother X, you wouldn't exist. Anyway, that's another story. We'll get to that down the road. Bowie, get lost. This dog wants something. He wants me to go and give him a treat, and I'm not going to do it. He just got one 5 minutes ago. Maybe the camera lady will go give him something to get him off my butt.
Did you eat the food in your bowl?
Oh, yeah. Eat the food in your bowl. Anyway, I don't know what they're afraid of. There's nothing bad about anybody that's a current member of that club, and anybody that knows already. So, you know, whatever. Don't if you don't want to, because it doesn't matter to me. Anyway, right here, I have the actual transcript, which is on the internet. Anybody can read it. Of, I guess at some point, Mr. Miller, John Bulldog Miller, tried to appeal his conviction, which is a fucking joke. And, of course, he was denied. He died in prison, and all it says was from a lengthy illness, probably cirrhosis of the liver. Anyway, I'm going to read this to you guys, and then we'll get into a little more discussion about it. I have to put on my other glasses because these are too dark to read. Wow. Don't look at that crazy eyeball. Whew. Wow. Okay. Here we go. Hopefully I'm looking fine. So Damon Runyon, this is how it starts. Damon Runyon would have been hard-pressed to improve on the cast of characters in this human tragedy. Damon Runyon was a author. He wrote like crime stories. I didn't write this. I don't know who wrote this. It's transcripts from the Supreme Court of Wyoming. Damon Runyon would have been hard-pressed to improve on the cast of characters in this human tragedy. So far as the case is concerned, John Bulldog Miller's appellate, the late Lawrence Diggy DeGroff, the victim, were the principal actors. The supporting cast consisted of Leland Yosemite Brown. That was the piece of crap's name I couldn't think of, Yosemite. Troll Davis, John Lizard Cassandler, and Richard Chainsaw Leonard, and Sherry, no nickname, Newell. The principal actors were unproductive members of society and both the recipients of and the largest of the federal government. Bowie, get lost. Diggy Diggy's entitlement checks were not insubstantial. I can't understand what word they're saying there. To some of the friends, a strange sounding name, and who wrote this? Anyway, they were taking advantage of him for his money, and they called him the goose that laid the golden egg. Before July 1985, Diggy lived with two men known as Tramp and Stash. But it wasn't Stash, it was Wheels, who relieved Diggy of most of his money as fast as it came in. In the later part of July, Diggy moved in with the appellate and his girlfriend, Bulldog and Sherry. And as I told you before, they wanted to get Diggy away from Bill, so they just went over there and played his victim's side, that they were veterans and in the military and they could treat him better. I've told you all this already. A typical day in the life of Bulldog Miller as described in his brief. He would get up at 8, have breakfast, then ride his Harley till about 11 a.m. Then he would stop at the Eagle's Nest Bar for a few beers, or 5 or 6. Then he would ride his motorcycle till about 6 p.m. Then he would have dinner, and he would ride his motorcycle some more and go to the Mayflower or the Eagle's Nest and drink whiskey or beer until closing time, about 2 a.m., and then he would ride his motorcycle home. October 2nd, 1985 started out as a typical day in the life of the appellant. Diggy DeGroff had just received a check, and his friends with the subculture handles were at the premises occupied by Bulldog and Diggy. To help Diggy reduce his balance at the party, alcohol flowed freely. Lizard, Cassandler, and Diggy threw a few punches, which Diggy wouldn't punch anybody. He doesn't even know what day it was. Lizard slammed Diggy's head into the wall, denting the wall, but not Diggy's head. And at that juncture, a girl named Sue, who I have no idea who these people, I know who Lizard is, but I have no idea who Sue was, exhibited considerable foresight and good judgment and hustled Lizard away from the party. He was probably drunk off his ass, which probably everybody was. The drinking continued unabated, whereupon Diggy announced that he had to throw up, so he repaired to the bathroom and did that. Next, Yosemite Brown stopped drinking for a few moments and went into the bathroom and stabbed Diggy a couple of times with his buck knife. Diggy's reaction was to yell, "Ouch!" Yosemite returned to the scene of the drinking and announced that he had just stabbed Diggy. Bulldog said to Yosemite, "Well, you started it, finish it." Whereupon Brown, Yosemite, that is, headed to the bathroom, mumbled something about stabbing Diggy again or slitting his throat. Brown returned and said that he had stabbed Diggy again, and the conversation then shifted to the discussion about the check Diggy had just received, which had led to the discussion that Diggy should be forced to sign the check so that he could be cashed. So Yosemite, Troll, and Bulldog, returned to where Diggy lay bleeding and moaning and forced him to endorse the check. Now, I'll stop there for a minute because I had heard it differently. I had heard that he wouldn't endorse the check, and this is before the stabbing, and that's why they stabbed him. I wasn't there. I don't know. It's all hearsay to me. This is from court proceedings. He was appealing his conviction, so I'm assuming that was already entered in previously as evidence. I don't know. I'm just reading it to you so you guys can get a taste of it. And you know I ain't making it up. Diggy had blood on his hands and stained the check. The threesome returned to the kitchen and decided whether the check could be cashed. Sherry, no nickname, Newell, girlfriend of Bulldog, attempted to clean the blood off the check but tore it in the process. The check was then ripped up and tossed into the fireplace. Appellant was angry that the check could not be cashed. After sending Sherry into the bedroom, he walked over to Diggy and stabbed them. Now, I had heard they cashed it. I don't know. But Bulldog ended up stabbing Diggy to death. Diggy died around 9:15 p.m. He sustained about 20 stab wounds, and all or any of them could have been fatal. Bulldog then suggested that Diggy's head and hands be chopped off to prevent identification. The corpse was pulled into the bathtub to allow the blood to wash down the drain, and either Yosemite or Troll or Chainsaw hacked off the right arm. But then Bulldog sent Sherry into town to get Chainsaw. I think he was there. And to buy firewood. The two stopped at a convenience store where Chainsaw purchased the firewood, and Sherry returned with Chainsaw about 11 p.m. When Chainsaw walked in, he saw Troll kneeling by the fireplace, holding a butane torch and using it to burn something. Chainsaw peered into the fireplace and saw a human head and hands burning. He then glanced into the bathroom where Yosemite stood with a butcher's knife. Chainsaw saw Diggy lying in the bathtub, the stump of a bloody arm sticking out of the tub. Now, this is a little off from the story I heard, because I had heard they were burning his head in the fireplace. It was like a wood burner, and that they were having a Halloween party, and that they had opened that up and showed the people that were there the burning head, and people thought it was some sort of a Halloween stunt. If you were at that party, you're welcome to comment down below. I don't know anybody that was there, because we ran in different circles at that point. And so, but I mean, that doesn't mean I wasn't friendly to somebody that might have been there, but not that I know of. I was pretty much an asshole, so I still am, by the way, in case you're wondering. Bulldog then used the wood Chainsaw brought to fuel the fire. Bulldog hacked off Diggy's hand and tossed it into the fireplace, and then Troll then undertook the tedious job of decapitating Diggy. They took turns slicing with a butcher's knife. Bulldog testified, "I'd go and drink, and then he, Troll, would chop, and then he'd come in and drink, and I'd go chop." Finally, they removed Diggy's head, holding it by the hair with one hand while chopping it with the other. He put the head in a plastic bag and tossed it into the fire, along with Diggy's clothes, his wallet, saving only his driver's license. At about 4:30 a.m., Bulldog and Troll shoved the body without head and hands, into the trunk of the Bulldog's car and drove it around on the back roads east of Cheyenne. Oops, I said what town it is. Looking for a place to hide the corpse. Then finally dumped it in a haystack near the Wyoming Hereford Ranch, where they cleaned up the car and the house. Diggy's checks continued to arrive at the appellant's post office box. Since the appellant, that's Bulldog, at Diggy's driver's license, he was able to cash the checks. Bulldog paid Diggy's bills to make sure it looked like he was alive so that nobody would start asking questions. But of course they were bragging about it. Then Bulldog paid his rent and bought groceries, and about 400 left after that he didn't know what he would do with, but probably drank it up, used part of it for December's Christmas presents. The crime came to light in January of '86 when Chainsaw, the rat snitch that he was, and I don't want to, well, I do. He's a rat and a snitch and a piece of shit. When Chainsaw Leonard needed a copy of his GED for a record of apprentice training program because he had obtained a GED while incarcerated in the federal penitentiary. For what? We don't know. He went to the United States Marshal's office to see if they had any information that he needed. While he was at the Marshal's office, he talked to George Stump, a deputy marshal whom Chainsaw had known for several years. And of course, at that point, I guess he decided he needed to come clean because he knew he was going to go up. Those guys all knew their days were numbered because everybody knew, because they can't keep their mouth shut. 3 can keep a secret if 2 are dead. That's important to remember. Anyway, Deputy Stump Chainsaw for several years. At that point in the conversation, Chainsaw mentioned that there was a body out here and they wanted to know more about it. I know where it came from and I know who did it. Stump reported the conversation to Sergeant Bill Knoll, a Cheyenne Police Department detective. Sergeant Knoll made arrangements to meet Chainsaw on January 24th of '86 at which time Chainsaw revealed the details of the murder and led officers to the body, saving his own ass. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because this is a real fucked up story, and I'm glad I had no part of it. You know, God looks out for people, and I really owe it to him for keeping this all away from me. It's amazing how one, like 75-cent slug through the tailgate of somebody's truck can prevent a lot down the road, and I'm thankful for that. An autopsy was performed on the decomposing remains, and it was determined that the cause of death was multiple stab wounds to the thorax and upper abdomen of the body, both the front and rear. Since the internal organs were gone due to insect or animal activity, it was impossible to determine the depth of the penetration of any single wound. The pathologist stated, however, that any or all of the 20 stab wounds could have been fatal. Before Bulldog's trial, Leland Yosemite Brown pled guilty to first-degree murder, and Robert Schroll Davis entered a plea of guilty to accessory after the fact. Both testified in the appeal trial, as did Richard Chainsaw Leonard, John Lizard Cassandler, and Sherry No Nickname Newell. Appellant Bulldog also testified in his own behalf. Sherry testified that Bulldog did nothing to prevent the murder, which was consistent with his own statement. On Friday, on the final day of the hearing, the jury learned that Diggy had been murdered, in Bulldog's own words, for shits and giggles. For the next day, the jury found guilty of accessory before the fact and the crime of first-degree murder. So it wasn't for shits and giggles. It was to impress a bunch of idiots from Texas. Like I said earlier, the United Brotherhood. I don't think they exist, or maybe they never existed. I'm only going by what I hear. I don't know. But anyway, let me put on my more serious glasses here. Oh, that's so much better. I'm so much more handsome. Anyway, that's kind of the rundown of the story. Disgusting. Horrible. I'm glad that it's, 40 years? 86 to now? 40 years ago. I was a young whippersnapper back then. Now I'm old. I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was, and that's important to remember. Anyway, after the fact and the fallout from that was, pretty much the Freedom Riders were done as a club back then. I mean, they are a club now, and they're still pretty much like they were then, kind of a bunch of guys that like to drink and ride and have a good time, and I'm pretty sure that's why they don't want to be associated with this story, but much like me, I don't want to be associated with it either, but it doesn't really go away. And here I am dredging it back up. But I'm only dredging it back up so that I can get the word out there. And, as we get older and our memories fade and we don't remember stories. Hell, it took me reading this thing to remember half of these people's names, You meet a Chainsaw, a Lizard, a Habernacki, who you name it. I don't even know. I can't even make up names anymore. You meet them all, and most of them are very forgettable. But anyway, Cheyenne was a real shitty place to be after that, and the cops really hassled bikers for a long time thanks to this, and kind of faded into obscurity there. And not long after this, I ended up getting divorced from my oldest boy's mom, and I got the hell out of Cheyenne and went to Las Vegas. And even out there, it haunted me a little bit because somebody that was friends with Tramp here, they ended up disappearing, and the cops came out to Las Vegas and asked me if I thought that Tramp could have done it. And I'm like, I don't live there anymore, and I don't want to know. And, these kind of things I'm not really a big fan of. Because much like everyone else that was involved there, I just like to live my life, ride, be free, and vibe in whatever I feel like vibing in, and living my life. And these days, you know, it might be a little weed. I don't really drink. I have a beautiful wife and camera lady and my cute little pup there, and I wrench on things. I know things, and that's it, you know. I don't bother people, and I don't like them bothering me, you know. As I say, you know, it's kind of that fuck around and find out situation with me. But hey, I'm like peace, love to everyone, really. My camera lady's chuckling at that over there. But anyway, we're going to move on from this story now. So our next installment of the golden age of leather will be coming up, and I've had a couple of ideas run by me. For instance, my brother X was reminding me of the time that we came back from Sturgis going 100 miles an hour the whole way. It only took us like 3 hours to get home. It was really cool. We were hauling ass, and nobody cared. They were like, we had our patches on, and they weren't going to stop us. And so we might talk about some of that. And we went down to the Run to the Wall down there at Red River, and it was all kind of in the same thing. That was when we were members of a support club for the Banditos called the Los Lobos, and you know, we're still affiliated. So you know, watch your mouth. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, I'm trying to decide. I have stories. I went to Mexico and brought back weed. We could go there. We could go so many places. I've done so much for so long with so little that I'm now sure I can do anything with nothing. And we're going to get there. But if you have a suggestion, you know me or you know of me, and you know, you have a suggestion or a story, you know, put it down below. Like, comment, share, and you know, whatever. It costs you nothing to subscribe to this channel, but you'll get so much more in return. Anyway, it's been a pleasure seeing y'all. Especially you. I see you. Hey, camera lady. You want to come and cut this thing off? Plus, I want to make sure that you understand that's me reading this. This all comes off the top of what little brain cells I have left. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you on the next installment of, what's it called? Oh, Golden Age of Leather. That's all them brain cells I killed.
That's the smoking of the weed.
Peace.